if we're going to get to grips with climate change at all, we're going to have a massive public education campaign, information, persuasion, which we've had before for huge issues, but we haven't had it for climate change. Governments have to be doing that.
Welcome to another Climate Emergency Forum. So today we're going to offer you something a little different. Well, we often talk about the various aspects of climate change and the effects on the environment, the effects on ocean life, various lives in the rainforest that we still have left, human life. We're going to move away from that today just a little bit because we're going to discuss climate change and mitigation strategies. There are strategies out there that we can institute right now to begin at least addressing the situation and offering some type of hope, okay? And this is what we all need when we're talking about climate change, is hope. So we've all come up with some of our favorite mitigation strategies. And I'm going to start us off and speaking about what is near and dear to my heart, and is also listed in this book as one of the top 10 strategies to address climate change, and that is educating women and girls. And in fact, there are three solutions, strategies offered in the Drawdown book involving specifically females that can help greatly in terms of mitigating the effects of climate change. And of course, educating women and girls is just right up there, number 6 on the list. Well, you might say, why in the world is that? Turns out that when females are educated, they have opportunity. They have options available to them that they wouldn't otherwise have. And I'm going to quote Nobel laureate, famous student from Afghanistan, Malala. She said, "One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world." And this is true. I mean, if you think about the famous figures in our lives that we study and know about, well, a lot of times they're famous because they've changed the world in some kind of way. Rachel Carson, in her famous book, Silent Spring, one pen and many sheets of paper, changed the world, right? With the elimination of the use of DDT, at least in the States. So educating women is paramount. So when women are more educated, they are more educated about many things, including the use of contraceptives. Allowing women to plan their family size creates an incredible impact on the world, because the more people there are, the more resources are used, the more carbon is emitted into the world and the atmosphere. So even though many of these women are in the global South, where there's a much smaller footprint and in terms of global greenhouse emissions, as we see in the global North, just by limiting the size of the families, they can incredibly decrease the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, decrease the stress on the planet. And finally, I would like to say, when they are educated, they can be more effective climate advocates. And we've seen a lot of the youth, look at Greta Thunberg, a lot of the youth activists are in fact female. So that's my favorite solution. And Peter, I'd like to hear what yours is.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And the general education part as well. If we're going to get to grips with climate change at all, we're going to have a massive public education campaign, information, persuasion, which we've had before for huge issues, but we haven't had it for climate change. Governments have to be doing that. The Stern Commission said that back in 2006. So education, education. There's a bottom line that determines all our strategies, determines the effectiveness of all our strategies. So I have to repeat it because it's still not out there. At COP26 in Glasgow, at the opening plenary, the chair of the IPCC, Dr. Hassan Lee, made a crucial bottom line statement in which he said that 1.5 degrees C and 2 degrees C is out of reach unless we put global emissions into, quote, immediate, rapid decline. So, I mean, it's a mystery to me why that isn't out there. I mean, maybe a lack of education, maybe people are defeatist, maybe people think that just can't happen. So how do we make it happen? To make it happen, we need millions of people, millions of Greta Thunbergs around the world, vast numbers. How do we make that happen? I think one of the challenges that I suggest we need to face is a question of how much do we love our children? How much do we love all the world's children? I think that needs thinking about. Then maybe we'll get millions out in the street and lobbying and forcing governments, corporations to do the right things. So the other word, of course, is mobilization. And that's a key word that's been out there at least since 2010 with Lester Brown. And we need mobilization of the world's public, as I've just said. We also need the governments to mobilize. It's been aptly described as a wartime basis in which everything changes, everything's focused to the one situation that you have to succeed with. And so mobilization is definitely the right word. We need massive peaceful protests. So all those young people are right on and they're getting out in very large numbers, and parents are encouraging them. So that's great. Ukraine, the craziness that's going on in the Ukraine between vast military forces of NATO, United States, and Russia. We have to demilitarize, right? How much, see those huge, vast numbers of Russian tanks? Imagine how much oil they'll be burning. Demilitarization, international peace is a prerequisite for not only sustainability, but it's a prerequisite for addressing and really dealing with climate change. And that means it's a prerequisite for survival. So if we love our children, we are going to be fighting in all and every way that we can for their future. We're going to be fighting for our common future survival. All of us, everyone, one humanity, united, right? We've got to see ourselves as one human race and all work together for the preservation of this wonderful planet Earth. And tragically, our children are not going to be left with a planet that I was born into. I'm very saddened about that. But we've got to do our best to not lose any more of our planet for them.
Thank you so much for that, Peter. And wow, you know, stopping the war machine is just absolutely huge. And I see that very much connected with the importance of educating girls. With more girls and females educated, one would hope that women would have more of a voice in terms of policy. You know, feminism as it was has always been against war. We know that war is a man-made instrument of mass death and power, and it doesn't just kill humans. It is a planet-killing machine. I mean, look at Agent Orange, for example. I mean, what a horrifying concept, isn't it? Just absolutely horrifying, man against nature. And I do mean that literally. I really appreciate your bringing that up. And when I look at these war-torn countries or countries that have seen war for generations, and you just look, it looks like a war zone. Where are all the beautiful animals that used to be there? Where's the flora, the fauna? It's just gone. Why? So that someone can say, we won, we have power. It's just a crazy. We just have to, as you say, rethink the whole way that we believe we are supposed to be as a species. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like Peter's idea of millions of Gretas, but maybe I'd modify that a bit and say 500,000 Gretas and 500,000, engineers who understand how serious climate change is and can work, to both mitigate and adapt and, incorporate some of these, put their minds on thinking about, ways to address the climate issue as opposed to, what many of them are doing if they're working in the military, industrial complex, for example. So 500,000 Gretas, 500,000 Elon Musk types. That's what I would vote for. So we're talking about strategies here, and strategy is really a plan. So what is our plan? And it could involve obviously many components. I mean, the human components and the technological components, right? Like the human components are just as important. And you've mentioned, Regina, the educating women. It's also education of people about climate science and extreme weather and stuff, starting with courses in the schools to the very young people. So it's imparting more knowledge on our planet and how our planet is changing. And then from the knowledge and the learning, people can then put the ideas together and sort of systems thinking. We need more systems thinkers. And then you can have wisdom about ways, things that you can do to try to reduce the problem without causing an even larger problem. And I really like the mention of the book Drawdown, and there's a sequel to that, Regeneration. There's lots of good ideas. In terms of the technological aspects, and any, moving forward in our society, many more people are thinking of survival, of our civilization, survival of our species. It's becoming, mainstream to have books written about apocalypse. And, I have this book here, which I just purchased, The Next Apocalypse, The Art and Science of Survival. So this is in like any mainstream bookstore, in the science section. There's books like this appearing more and more. So people are very concerned, and the virus kind of focused people's minds on, well, we can't assume everything will run normally. There can be supply shortages. There can be, hardships to people all around the world simultaneously. So, in terms of the advancing technology on climate, we need more and more scientists and engineers and industry and corporations. A lot of the corporations, of course, focus on the profit motive. So it's up to governments to nudge the corporations with incentives to use their profit motive, to make it profitable to do good things for the planet, as opposed to making it profitable to do harm to the planet, which is often what is happening. And that's just like something that a well thought out policies from governments can actually nudge companies to really to do the right thing and to make huge advancements to reduce pollution and reduce plastics and reduce of course, the biggest thing is reduce the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So these are all strategies or plans. And I just want to talk briefly about some of the tactics now. And the tactics are basically the means of achieving your strategical objectives, or in other words, the methods to follow through with your plan, to enact your plan. The biggest thing is that the biggest tactic for addressing climate is the elimination of fossil fuel subsidies. Having the full cost of fossil fuels incorporated in, and then that alone will cause tremendous development and growth of alternative energies, renewable energies, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some of the methods that some of my favorite horses that I would bet on in terms of tactical methods to address climate, and again, not solutions, but tactical methods, are things like ocean pasture restoration, which would restore lots of life in the oceans, but also draw down huge amounts of CO2 in the 70% of the Earth's surface where humans don't live, the ocean surfaces. Also things like marine cloud brightening to enhance the brightness of clouds to cool the air going up into the Arctic, to cool the seawater moving up into the Arctic, causing great warming. Also, there's techniques like MIR, which is to deploy mirrors on the surface of the Earth to reflect solar radiation to cause cooling. Very interesting ideas, but I would argue with the startling reduction of cost to launch things into orbit that are being made, that space-based systems need to be looked at again seriously to reduce some sunlight that reaches the Earth to cool, to allow us time to do all of these other things. We're in an age of consequences right now, and we need to fight. And we may not succeed, but we need to make every effort possible to mitigate the climate change mayhem that is occurring at the moment.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. I like the phrase, the climate change mayhem. That's definitely what we're seeing. And you're absolutely right. We need to do as much in terms of mitigation as possible.
I like I've played chess my whole life. It's a game I love. And strategy versus tactics are key ideas to anybody that plays games. They're key ideas in game theory. They're key ideas in complex systems and what we need to do. Climate is certainly a complex system. So those concepts are not fully understood by lots of people, the differences between strategy and tactics, but they're very important for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so one of the points that you brought up, Paul, I thought was really interesting, was about making helping the planet profitable as opposed to hurting the planet, which for some reason that seems to be the main draw and the thrust of our experience as humans, is just destroying the planet and making it profitable. It kind of reminds me of that Dr. Seuss story, The Lorax. Yeah, I mean, I guess our own survival is not a good enough reason to change our ways and to help the planet. It needs to have some type of profit motive. It's unfortunate, but I think that is key here in this. We're able to help the fossil fuel industry become extremely profitable through our tax subsidies, but people balk at tax subsidies going to renewable energy. So we're going to have to find a way to change the way people think and realize that doing good can be profitable and beneficial to everyone. And it's okay if everyone benefits. It's okay if not just a few guys on top benefit and everyone else suffers. It's okay, gang. It's not going to take anything away. Somehow we've got to get that message across. It seems very difficult. Now, what are your thoughts? I know that eliminating fossil fuels subsidies is near and dear to your heart, Peter.
Oh yeah, and I remain astounded that there still is not a united, sustained campaign, a constant campaign to force governments to stop subsidizing fossil fuels. I mean, our own governments are murdering us, and surely we need to. That needs to be the focus of all protests, and it's not. That's very, very frustrating. Other greenhouse gas polluting subsidies on other things should also be removed. Yeah, I really like the way that Paul described the economic conversion that's required. And, late Stuart Scott, I mean, that was his big thing, and he's absolutely right. It's the world economy that's actually destroying the future. And what's missed about the world economy, apart from some very good NGOs like the Rainforest Action Network, is the banks. If there is a villain behind the evil that's being done, it's the banks. It's the big corporate investment banks. And yes, some NGOs have woken up to this and sending out letters to CEOs, and they worked out how many trillions and trillions of dollars, the investment banks have made since the Paris Agreement was signed. And all these huge, insane, massive projects of extracting and burning more and more and more fossil fuels, they're all financed by the banks. So if our governments aren't going, we're fighting our governments, unfortunately. Our governments are on the wrong side. So if we can't force our governments to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, which surely we have to succeed at sometime, then we need to also concentrate on the financing of the banks. And some very smart NGOs are also addressing the big insurance companies, because I didn't know this, but number one, the Exxon and ConocoPhillips and all these planet destroyers, they not only have to have financing from the big banks, they also have to have insurance from the big fossil fuel subsidies. So it's really good that these NGOs bringing this to the attention, and their strategies, they're really good strategies, and we just got to keep up, and they need more and more and more and more support.
Thank you so much. So critically important, a major key mitigation strategy. Paul, did you want to add to your list, or did you want to elaborate on your list?
Well, I just want to give a little bit of rah-rah sort of cheerleading here, because it's very important to remember, to many people, this climate issue is, well, it's a wicked problem. It's a problem that it's a long-term problem. Okay, we've done things in the last 100 years as a civilization that have caused the problem, and there's not a magic silver bullet or one solution at the moment to stop the problem. We have to have lots of ideas and lots of approaches to address the issue, and we can't. We need to do these things. Look at these ideas and strategies to deal with the problem, whether or not, we don't know whether they're going to work or not, but we have to do them. It's crucial that we do them. We may fail in the end and have, a terrible collapse of civilization, although, of course, that doesn't happen all at once. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Weaker countries and economies, that don't have the resources, fall first, right? They fall off the cliff first. It doesn't all happen, in one day or 1 week, right? It's a process. I think a lot of people forget about that. Collapse is a process. It's not a one-of thing. But, we don't know if we're going to succeed, but we have to try. We have to do all we can to try, so that we can, we can look our kids and grandkids in the eye and say, look, I'm trying to do everything I can as an individual to allow you to have a future.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate your saying that. I know a lot of people, I've heard people, maybe especially young people sometimes, say, what's the point? Why bother? It's too late anyway. And I think the answer is definitely not to go straight from problem to despair. It's definitely the easiest way, but we just can't. And can you imagine if we had mitigating strategies and we just threw up our hands and said, to heck with it, it's too much, why bother? And then we watch everything, go down as it has been, the runaway wildfires, the floods, people starving due to famine. We just cannot let that happen. We can't fall to despair. So I appreciate your giving us a little bit of a cheer. It's important. And I hope that those of you who watched took some cheer out of it. Listen, there are things we can do. There are things we can do. And, if you don't have it, you might want to check out this book. Now, you don't even have to buy it. They have a really good website. We'll go ahead and link it down in the description below. And just look at a few of the things and see what you may be able to do in your own way to support the drawdown of the greenhouse gases and the global warming emissions that are consuming us on our planet. We can do something, and we must. And joining us today is just a part of that. So we really appreciate your joining us. Go ahead and hit the like button, share this video, and we're going to ask you to subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe, be a part of the team, and leave your comments down below. Are there any mitigating strategies that we left out that you think we should have talked about? Well, if so, please leave it down there in the little comment section, and we may take up your suggestion and share it in a future episode. So thanks so much for being with us. Have a great day.